Hi, my name is Francisco Jose Ortiz Molina, and I'm going to present the North Korean nuclear crisis for the class of causes of war. Here it's my outline. First, I'm going to start with my research question, going to continue with my historical context, and with the causes of war explanations, with using the realism theory perspective and the constructivist theory perspective. Then I'm gonna say some conclusions and show the bibliography. My research question is: does North Korea represent a real threat to the Western hegemony? Simple, people will say yes, it represent, or not. It won't. Yeah, this nuclear weapons is just a threat. No, it's more complex than that, and I'm gonna show it by first saying the background and the story of how we get to this question by speaking about the history of this conflict, and then with using these theories, why it's not that simple to answer it. First, to all of that, I'm going to talk about the historical context. Here we have some background before the nuclear crisis, and we have as the first point, the division of Korea. Korea wasn't a free state; it was part of Japan until the end of Second World War, when the Soviet Union and United States free in a certain way Korea, but divided uh, for them by the 38 parallel. And sending soldiers to the north part that will be the communist Korea, part of the Soviet Union and China, and the south will help the Western and the United States. And at the same time, it starts the Cold War. Some historians said the Cold War started in 48, 45. Some others in 48. The thing is that the the division of Korea was created, and Korea as independent states were burned. Uh, the Cold War was also created, which comes with a lot of tensions and creates a lot of crisis along the war. In this part was really tension because it was a strategic point for Asia. North Korea and South Korea start creating tension between them, and United States start sending soldiers to the South Korea part, and China and the Soviet Union start sending soldiers, weapons, and at the 25th of June 1950, North Korea tried to reunify South Korea and start the Korean War. This war remains for 3 years until the 27th July of 1953, and the line that divides both Koreas was changing along this time. Sometimes more down, some others more up, but at the end it remains in the 38 parallel that steals the division today. And at the end of the war was not the end of the war, was the recession, was the stop of the direct conflict, because the war still until today has never stopped, and the tensions has never stopped between both countries. The one that stop is just the direct conflict, but they can start in any moment. And as these tensions between these two sides of country, North Korea and South Korea, now independent states, start spying, seeing each other weapons and guns career. We see that South Korean nuclear program start in the 1970s, helped by Western society in the United States as a strategic point to use nuclear weapons as Soviet Union do the same by sending nuclear nukes to Cuba as an strategic point. However, this nuclear program wasn't successful and stopped later. However, North Korea started its research in the 80s of nuclear energy. It was not nuclear weapons, not nukes. We have to specify. And this year, it was our search for nuclear energy and investigation of nuclear issues. So, as they were involved in nuclear things and start creating labs and all these installations for nuclear energy, they were forced to get into the NPT, the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. This treaty or organization was supposed to force the states that are part of it to don't create more nuclear weapons. Well, for this time, North Korea had none. And this brings us to the first nuclear crisis that happened some years later. In 1991, the Soviet Union dissolves, and they were the ones who were protecting North Korea from South Korea and the United States. They were the shield and the ones who maintained the economy, sending money and buying their products. In 1992, the tensions start because they start looking for their own protection, and the IAEA inspection group start the nuclear inspection of the North Korean facilities. However, they found inconsistencies, and they also want to see other nuclear reactors, but they weren't allowed by the government, which create a big they were not sure why the government won't let them see the other facilities, which create tension between them and the other states with the organization. So 1 year later, North Korea declares the intentions to withdraw from the NPT, the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons Treaty, and this was a real bomb in international relations. It was a small state and poor state as North Korea trying to get out of the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons Treaty. It means they want to create their own nuclear weapons, and they have the facilities, at least with the nuclear reactors, to start working on them. This creates the first nuclear crisis, which create tensions with the U.S., and the U.S. start threatening North Korea with the war if they start creating nuclear weapons. And these tensions start growing until 1994, when there were different kind of negotiations. The former U.S. President Carter, as you see here in the picture in the right, visited North Korea to talk with the father of Kim Jong-un, Kim Il-sung, the chief of the country, about the concerning of the nuclear war and to freeze its nuclear program. It was effective, and the first nuclear crisis was managed and calmed. However, this won't last forever, and 8 years later, a bit more, it starts the second nuclear crisis. First, in 2002, we have that North Korea expels the IAEA inspection team, which rings the alarms because they were the ones who has to make sure there were not nuclear weapons. And 1 year later, North Korea makes it official the withdrawal from the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons Treaty, making it a real harm to the international relations and provoking a humanitarian crisis inside the country because they were blocked and they have a lot of economic issues because of this decision. However, they continue on that path, and in 2005 they claim to have nuclear weapons. Now it's not just words. Now they have real mass destructions weapons that could destroy lives, cities, countries. And 1 year later, they do their first nuclear test. 3 years later, they make it second. 4 years later, they make a third. 3 years later, the fourth. And 1 year later, they make the sixth nuclear test, which was an hydrogen bomb. An hydrogen bomb is way dangerous, way powerful than the ones that were used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and it's more powerful than normal nukes. 1 year later, this escalate into a big crisis. The second nuclear crisis was in its peak when Kim Jong-un said in public that their nukes could easily get to the United States. Now their bombs, nuclear mass destruction weapons, can get easily to the United States field. This changed all the crisis and get it to a point never seen before. It's big in the history of this nuclear crisis, and it pushed the President Donald Trump to start negotiating with Kim Jong-un and North Korea. These negotiations go well, and in 2019, Donald Trump becomes the first U.S. president in the office, in the White House, in turn, that step on North Korea and speaks to the North Korean chief. And this year they start negotiating. They start also speaking with the South Korea, which was a big step on the relations between these two countries that we have to remember that they still in war. So that they start negotiating, it's a real good point, and Trump was helpful in this way. However, this didn't last for long, and the tensions come again, and we can see nowadays, just 1 month ago or 2 weeks ago, that there were missiles thrown near Japan and near South Korea. That is not a direct harm, but it's provoking. It's showing that there are tensions, and that in any moment these tensions can go into a direct war. A direct war with a state that has massive nuclear weapons of mass destruction is a worse humanitarian crisis than seen before. And with all this context and background of the crisis of nuclear weapons in North Korea, we have the causes of war of explanations. Not the Korean War, the war of the nuclear war. And to understand this, we have the realism theory perspective first. We can start here with the conflict, that the conflict becomes clearer when viewed around a chaotic international arena where countries are in a continual quest for power. And as we are talking in the realist theory perspective, power through arms, to weapons, to maze, however you want to say it. The conflict begins in the middle of the Cold War, when the countries were divided into two poles where there was a specific balance of power, which changed with the end of the Soviet Union, fueling direct tensions between the new states